Okay, so good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. This is a FLUIDOS, which is a Horizon Europe project. It's a workshop to discuss the open call that the project is running. With me today, I have two colleagues. So you have Costanza, who is a project manager here at Digital SME, and we have Fulvio, who's from the University, the Politecnica di Torino, who is the project technical coordinator. So I will quickly give you an intro to the project and the agenda for the meeting today, and then we can dive in to learning about the open call. So we have two sections. Firstly, we will have an introduction to what the open call, what that means, how you can apply to it, and some opportunity for questions and answers on that. And then secondly, we have a session going into the kind of technical side of the project. So how the FLUIDOS system will work and what the open calls kind of are intended to achieve technically. So just a note on this, if you have any questions, please feel free to either write them in the chat or raise your hand, but we will be dealing with them in the Q&A session at the end of each presentation rather than in the moment. But you can feel free to drop them in the chat at any time. So before we get started with this, I'd just like to introduce the project itself. So I think on the next slide, we have the project objectives and also the kind of mission statement of the project. But coming from a non-technical background, I will explain this in kind of more layman's terms. So the goal of FLUIDOS is to kind of leverage underutilized processing power in an IoT ecosystem. So in a system, there may be tens or hundreds, if not thousands of devices kind of all working together of part of the system, but performing their task in isolation and sort of only performing predetermined tasks, which kind of implies that there may be some spare or latent computing power in these devices. And the goal of FLUIDOS is to create an operating system that can integrate and govern all of these devices so that they can contribute spare processing power to larger scale tasks, so that these tasks can then be performed on site rather than having them perform, say, downstream in the cloud or at a data center, for example. So how this will be achieved, I will leave that up to Fulvio to explain that in more detail. But for now, I will pass over to Costanza, who will explain more about the open calls themselves and how these will be undertaken.
Thanks, James, for the introduction. And thanks everybody that joined today. I think it's a very great opportunity to learn more and uncover your insights and doubts related to the open calls. So as my colleague previously mentioned, and of course, Fulvio will give you a more technical perspective and more insights from a technical stance. FLUIDOS is a European founded project, and it's very innovative in the sense that it's going to leverage the processing capabilities available at the edge in order to then form a seamless computing continuum. And I will focus, let's say, in this first part. And please, again, if you have any question, feel free to raise your hand, and I'm gonna try to address all your questions at the end of the presentation, all the information regarding to the open calls. Because as of the 15th of December of last year, 2023, FLUIDOS First Open Call has been open for high-tech SME researcher, innovators, and let's say individuals, entities, and small consortia. But let's enter inside the details of these open calls in order to address potentially all your doubts. So the FLUIDOS Open Call, the first FLUIDOS Open Call will play a pivotal role for these projects, and FLUIDOS Open Call will offer two types of grants. As you can see from the slides, one grant is technological extension grants, and the second type of grant is the use case grant. What are the difference and why we are here to talk about this? So technological extension grants will be open for individual entities, and this includes, as mentioned before, small, medium enterprises, research institution, organization, and so on. The five selected applicants for these grants will be provided up to 75,000 euros in order to develop and integrate additional open sources functionality to the FLUIDOS architecture. Regarding the second type of grant, use case grants, these type of grants will be open for both individual entities, as listed before, so small, medium enterprises, organizations, research institutions, think tank, and so on, but also to small consortia. And this means 2 to 3 entities. One of these has to be a small, medium enterprise. These use case grants will be granted to 5 selected applicants in this first open call, the financial support will be up to 120,000 euros for what? For test and validate FLUIDOS architecture and software, and also exploring new sectors and domains beyond the traditional application that FLUIDOS is working on. So in this first open call, that, as mentioned before, started and was launched on the 15th of December and will be open until the 29th of February, so the end of February. There will be 2 types of grants, and these grants, the tech grants and the use case grants, will be granted to 5 applicants for the first one and 5 applicants to the second one. But I would like to add also that there will be a second open call. This second open call will be launched in August, and during the second open call, there will be the possibility to apply only for use case grants, up again to 5 selected applicants. This is a brief overview. This is another slide to help you gather more information related to this first open call. And it has been divided into 3 parts. In the first part, you can see the application process. As mentioned before, this open call will be open until the end of February. The major part of the application process the application will be open for both grants at the same time, and all the specific guidelines are presented on our website. I will share with you, of course, all the links. There are, of course, guidelines for applicants, but also application templates that you can use during your applications. The second part of these slides will indeed focus on the evaluation process to give you an update of what is going to happen. So once we are going to close these open calls at the end of February, we are going to have an evaluation process following the proposal of the project. This proposal evaluation will last 1 month. The evaluation process will be conducted by internal, so project-based technical partners, but also external external evaluators, which have been and will be selected through another open call that has been already closed. Inside the guidelines for applicants, and again, all documents will be shared with you, you will find also all the evaluation criteria that are part of these and are needed for this open call. Regarding the grant process, so after notifying the successful applicant, which for the first open call, I would like to reiterate this, will be 5 winners, 5 selected applicants for the technological extension grants, plus 5 selected applicants for the use case grants. A sub-grant agreement that also, of course, also this document can be shared with you, will be signed within 1 month, and we will be providing 50% of the grant awarded immediately. Then there is a grant period that is cover 8 months with a mid-review after 4 months, where technical partners inside the project will assess the progress done and take or give suggestion or take corrective actions if needed. At the end of the 8 months, both technological extension activities, say develop and integrate open source functionality, and the use case grants activities, so related more on test and validating the FLUIDOS architecture, will be concluded. After the final review, we will, of course, award the remaining 50% of the financial support for all the activities. I'm inserting in the slides, and of course, if you have specific questions, I'm going to address them in the Q&A. All the links that are needed for you if you're going to apply for this, I think, very interesting opportunity. All the links that are needed for you. So as you can see, there will be a part dedicated to the white paper, and Fulvio is going to talk about this in the second part of this meeting, and all the information related indeed to the application templates and guidelines. I also inserted another email because it could be possible that you will have some concerns or questions after this meeting when you're going to apply. And of course, just to mention, this is an email address that you can use in order to send us all the questions related to the open calls, and we are going to address them. In order to give a start to potential questions related to the open calls, these are some of the frequently asked questions. And of course, again, I'm going to address these, but as an example for you to start if you have any doubts. So the deadline again is the end of February. The application received after the deadline will not be considered. Inside this project, we, thanks to ideas of several partners, including Fulvio in this call, we created the FLUIDOS Champions. FLUIDOS Champions is let's say, a group made up of different partners that are part of these projects that are available to review the draft application form if you have any doubts prior sending it out. Of course, they are going to provide you constructive feedback, but to do so, of course, this review draft application has to be sent way before in order to give that time to support you in this. Another interesting question that is often asked is it possible to submit different application to both open calls? Well, it depends, in the sense that submitting multiple proposals for the same grant, for the same call, is not permissible. But if you're going to apply to one of the two grants, for instance, use case grants in the first open call, and you're not going to be selected, you have the possibility to resubmit for the second open call for the same grant. But you have to clarify and underline the fact that you apply also in the first one. And if you are selected as a potential winner of the tech grants, so the technological extension grants, you can reapply also for the use case grants in the second open call. I was very quick on this, but I'm very open to address all your questions. It's a very, I think it's a very good opportunities, regardless your business. The topic is very specific, so I suppose that you might have some concerns, some questions related on this. But since it's very convoluted in the sense that there are two types of grants. If you have any question, please, this is time to raise your hands. You can unmute yourself, of course, and I'm here to reply to more specific question if you have some.
Okay, I'm not sure I see any questions, so hopefully that means you did a really good job, Cassandra, explaining it all. Just a note, so we'll be sharing these presentations after the meeting, so if you want any of the links or email addresses, for example, you can access them that way. We have a question here in the chat.
Yeah, happy to address this. So for the UCG type, so for the use case grant, is it possible to apply both as an individual entity, so alone, or via a small consortia made up maximum of 3 different entities, and one has to be a small medium enterprise? but you can choose to apply alone or with other 2 entities maximum with you in supporting your application. I hope to have addressed your question.
Yeah, if I may add a point here, usually in use case grants, you may need to extend a little bit the technology. I mean, it's not mandatory, but it's very likely. So if you present a project alone, you should be careful to demonstrate that you have the capability to extend the technology and to run the use case, which is something that is not so common. But this said, okay, it's up to you, the final decision.
Okay, I think unless there are more questions coming via the chat, maybe Fulvio, we can move on to your the technical presentation of Fluidos. And if people have questions for the kind of more administrative part of the open call, we can continue to receive them via the chat, and then we can also address them in the second Q&A as well, in case anyone thinks of any more questions.
Okay, perfect. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll be very brief here as well, because the problem that we are facing starts from, let's say, this kind of very high-level consideration. So either in Internet of Things, so at the very edge of our world, but also in the edge and cloud world, we have so many silos where we deploy applications. So for instance, if we deploy an application in AWS, in Amazon, this application has to be contained all in Amazon. We cannot deploy seamlessly an application that stays half in Amazon and half in Google. And the same happens when we start an application that runs on our smartphone. Once the resources of our smartphone are finished, this application will stop working. It cannot scale, leveraging the resources in another smartphone nearby, or maybe in a server that is available out there. So, you know, our world currently is still made by many silos. You have to install and operate an app there, and you cannot leverage the huge amount of processing power and resources that are available in nearby devices or in other servers or in the cloud and so on. So what do we need here? We need to create a sort of virtual continuum that moves from this kind of approach where the application, if it wants to leverage multiple resources, has to be deployed with explicitly some components in the far edge, some other component at the telco edge, some other in the cloud, but explicitly into a world where the application is deployed into a sort of meta orchestrator. So you just drop the application in there, and this meta orchestrator will automatically deploy some component in the far edge, some component in the telco, some component in the cloud, some component in my smartphone, and so on. So that's, in a sense, what we aim at doing in the FLUIDOS project. So our objective is to create this kind of virtual space, the software primitives to create this virtual space that is highly dynamic, that supports the deployment of services and applications across a huge amount of devices, servers, cloud, and so on. So that when you deploy something, an application, you don't have to care where the application goes, as long as it works and it is compliant with the quality parameters that you have to specify. For instance, maybe this application has to answer within 2 milliseconds. Okay, those are constraints that you have to set. But apart from that, apart from the constraints, where the actual application or its own components are deployed is something that is not so important for normal people. So this is basically FLUIDOS. So the computing continuum envisioned by FLUIDOS, it defines a virtual space that spans across multiple technological domains. Technological domains means a smartphone, a laptop, a server, a group of servers managed by Kubernetes, a cloud provider. So we're pretty agnostic in this respect. So we support multiple technological domains and potentially across multiple administrative domains, because all the entities may not be under the control of the same actor. So the smartphone is mine, the cloud is owned by Amazon, and maybe the laptop is owned by my friend, and so on. So those kind of two-dimension, technological dimension and administrative dimensions, in which we have this kind of three properties that we define in our project. So deployment transparency. So I don't care where my services are. Communication transparency, which means independently of where my services are, they are communicating seamlessly like they are running locally. And resource availability transparency. That means if my service has to scale, has to grow up, and there are no resources available locally, it can simply take some resources in another node or in another server nearby in a completely transparent way. So how can we do this within our project? Of course, the FLUIDOS MetaOS is what we're aiming for, and honestly, we're in the middle of the project, so not all the components have been yet delivered, and definitely not at the full extent. So you may need to extend the technology, to tune the technology for your use cases, and so on, because this is a work in progress, actually. But if you are interested in use cases, let's consider that the FLUIDOS project really heavily leverages the Lico.io project, which is the fundamental piece that we leverage in order to create this computing continuum. Then there are several additional properties that we are covering in our FLUIDOS MetaOS, but the basis is the Lico.io. So just in case of troubles, you can always leverage the Lico.io as an alternative starting point, not preferred. So the preferred is definitely the FLUIDOS MetaOS, but just in case, you can also take into account this Lico.io project, which, by the way, is also more robust because it's, let's say, production grade, while our software in FLUIDOS is definitely a proof of concept. And what do we expect you to do? First, demonstrate the advantages of the FLUIDOS computing continuum. And this is a very important point for use cases. We're not looking for distributed applications or for somebody that solves a very interesting security problem. We don't care about that. We care about problems, applications, services that have an advantage when executed in the FLUIDOS computing continuum. This is what we would like to have. So we're not gonna support whatever use case you like. The use case must be demonstrated in the FLUIDOS computing continuum, and we expect that you leverage the advantages of the computing continuum. It's not distributed computing in generic. This is not our goal. The second approach, so this is oriented to use cases. The second approach instead is extending the technology. So we expect that you propose some nice idea that solve relevant problems that arise in the creation, orchestration, and management of the FLUIDOS computing continuum. Not whatever computing continuum, the FLUIDOS computing continuum. And also the services and applications within. Because our objective is not just to create the computing continuum, the FLUIDOS computing continuum, but to run services in there. So if there are problems, technical problems that are related to applications running in this computing continuum, okay, that is a nice problem to address and to solve. Okay, so I would like to stress that the FLUIDOS computing continuum is currently a unique proposal. We have no idea in the future if we are right. So if the computing continuums will be created, let's say, FLUIDOS-like or in a different way. Of course, we don't know the future. We believe our idea is a very nice idea and very strong idea. And we would like people to help us to extend, to develop, and to validate this idea in order to come at the end of the project with a nice conclusion that says, okay, this is really the computing continuum that we need. Or, you know, in a research project, we can also conclude that says, okay, probably we can do better. And well, anyway, we learned from that. And that's the end of my technical presentation. Open to question now.
Thank you, Fulvio. I see we have one question in the chat from Benham. I think it came kind of at the end of the previous one about the technology extension part. And so it's if you mean technology beyond the ones that are already being used in FLUIDOS currently.
Yeah. So, you know, we cannot reinvent the wheel. So, of course, we are leveraging already existing technology for some of our objectives. Definitely, I mentioned the Lico.io, which is the one that we're leveraging in order to create this computing continuum. There may be other technologies. So one of our partners is currently extending QBadge, probably you know already, which is a technology that allows to reach very tiny things. So, I mean, it's more appropriate for microcontrollers and the Internet of Things world. As well as there are some technologies in the security arena, like trusted execution technologies and so on, that can be very useful for our idea. So in general, we are not against the use of, let's say, ancillary technologies, because of course we cannot reinvent the wheel. But all those technologies must be related to FLUIDOS. So there should be a clear understanding of the FLUIDOS approach and a clear motivation why you are going to use and propose an existing technology and maybe extending it in some way in order to fit for the FLUIDOS objectives. So what is very important here is the FLUIDOS computing continuum, a unique idea that we have, and you have to fit there. I don't know if I answered to your question, Benham.
Yep, it seems you did. Okay, so thank you, Fulvio, for that. If anyone else has any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask or drop them in the chat and we can respond to them as well.
Yeah, while looking for questions, please note that in the open calls, we defined the figure of the champion. Because we know that the idea of the fluidous computing continuum is something new and is not so obvious that applicants are so familiar with our idea. So please feel free, even more, we encourage to leverage this feature that we have, so this possibility to have champions, so to have a person that is working in our project in Fluidos that helps you to shape your proposal and to make it the most appropriate possible for our open cause. So we really stress you not to work alone, possibly, but work with us. We are really open to help any proposal to be better aligned with the Fluidos approach and ideas.
To follow that up, as I mentioned, the contact addresses for kind of reaching out to the Fluidos champions or for some advice is available in the presentation. So we'll be sharing them afterwards so you can have access to that. And it's also available on the website as well. I think we can maybe close the call here if there are no other questions. We'll give it a few more moments for people. Here we have one in the chat. Fulvio, I think this one's for you.
Okay, so reading the question, what's the difference in terms of knowledge to acquire between using any Linux distribution plus Kubernetes and using Fluidos? Okay, so we are not gonna reinvent the wheel. So we have this kind of software stack. Let me write a little bit here so it makes a little bit more clear. So we have the operating system. We have so many operating systems. We are not touching the operating system. So you have Linux, you have Ubuntu, you have NixOS, you have ROS. ROS is something that we support and we like very much. We're not gonna touch the operating system. On top of the operating system, we assume you have Kubernetes in one of the flavors that Kubernetes is available. It can be Kubernetes vanilla, it can be micro Kubernetes, it can be Rancher K3s. We don't care. We have Kubernetes. And on top of that, we have Lico, which is our component that provide us the basic primitives to create the computing continuum. And even on top, we have Fluidos. So, there is not that much to know about the operating system. The operating system is something that is already there. We're not touching, we're not extending. We like all the operating systems are there. So our software stack is mainly based on Kubernetes, Lico, and then Fluidos. I don't know if I answered the question.
We can just wait if there's a follow-up maybe in the chat, or if not. If anyone else has any more questions, we're happy to receive them in the chat, or if you want to ask them, that's fine. Please feel free. It's a very open forum.
So reading a couple of more comments. FLUIDOS is not an operating system. No, correct. It's a meta operating system, and it's something that stays on top of existing software stack. So it's more an orchestrator of an orchestrator. We can see that because, you know, LICO is something that is creating virtual clusters across multiple real clusters. What are real clusters? Like in the picture here, real clusters can be even devices. So this box can be even a single individual device with K3S. So for us, each FLUIDOS node is actually a Kubernetes cluster. And any Kubernetes cluster can join and peer another Kubernetes cluster and create this kind of virtual space that shares resources with both. Okay, so this creation of the virtual space is provided mostly by LICO and some other components that we're developing, but mostly by LICO. The problem is how to orchestrate that, how to deploy applications, how to guarantee properties. So, you know, the latency within blah, blah, and so on. So policies. So this is something that we have to address in FLUIDOS. Okay, so it's correct when you say it's an orchestrator of an orchestrator. Yeah, because LICO is not able to say, I want to join this other cluster. Somebody has to tell LICO, please join the other cluster and create a unique virtual space. And who is this guy? Is FLUIDOS plus other components. Another question, is there any relation with Terraform? Terraform is a tool that facilitates the deployment on different cloud platforms, but it does not create the computing continuum. So Terraform can be used actually to deploy some components in cloud like Azure and Google and whatever, but it cannot create the computing continuum between them. And there is LICO for that. By the way, LICO has also a provider for Terraform. So you can deploy LICO with Terraform. Currently, you cannot deploy FLUIDOS with Terraform because we didn't create any component for Terraform. But I mean, it's just engineering. So it's not a big deal if needed.
Thanks. My question was rather conceptually if there is some similarity, because from what I understand, it's like one defines the application and then based on some policies, whatever rules, it decides where to deploy. And in this respect, I refer to Terraform as a tool to deploy basically the application. But here the new moment is maybe deployment in the device, which if you could shed some light on it, that will be grateful.
No, Terraform is very different from the FLUIDOS approach. When you deploy a Terraform, you can decide maybe that something stays in a cluster and something stays in another cluster, but you have to decide a priori. Then, if the service that you deployed in a first cluster has to scale, it cannot scale automatically in another cluster. Just talk in terms of Kubernetes. You know the cluster IP services. Cluster IP services are available only within your cluster. If you have something that runs in another cluster, you cannot use the cluster IP service. And this is something that is completely against our principles. So when an application scales, a replica can go into another cluster and they must see each other like being in the same space. So they still be able to use a cluster IP service to talk to each other, even if one replica is in one cluster and the other replica is in the other. So this is very different from what you can achieve with Terraform. Terraform cannot support such use cases.
Right, but still, is it the idea that using some framework which you provide and some best practice and rules develops the application, then deploys to this Fluids computing continuum, and then it's Fluidos who decides where to deploy the components and the private networks and the storage and whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
Thanks.
Correct. So, Michael, what are the use cases already being proposed for Fluidos? Currently, we have 3 use cases. Let's go there. Let's go to smart viticulture. That probably is the simplest one to explain. So this is one of our partners that is working on smart viticulture. I think everybody knows that you need some processing power in order to analyze what is going on in your vineyard and to monitor the crops and whatever, okay? The problem here is that in some cases, you have a good network connection with the cloud, okay? So you have most of your services and your application running on the cloud is something that runs at the edge because, you know, you have a rover, you have a sensor, so a little bit of software has to be executed at the edge, but most of the software runs in the cloud. But this requires a very good network connection. That is not always available. So what happens in the case of our partner? It happens that basically has to engineer different versions of the application. So one application is used when you have a very good network connection, and then most of the components stays in the cloud. Another version is used when you have a, let's say, fairly good network. Okay, and then some more components are deployed at the edge. Maybe you have to deploy a server at the edge in order to support those components, while some other portion are still running in the cloud. And then there is a third version of everything, because there are some cases in which the network connection doesn't exist at all. So you have to deploy everything locally. So a third version of the product with everything, the processing logic, updates, everything locally. And this is a huge pain for our partner. So our partner would like to focus on its own objective, which is creating software to support wine and viticulture and so on, not to create a software that decides where to deploy things, how things can connect and communicate together. So for our partner, the Fluidos approach is really, really fantastic because they say, I don't care where the component is deployed. It would be Fluidos that decides where the component is deployed. Of course, you need some processing power. So, I mean, if you don't have the server at the edge, I cannot deploy anything at the edge. But, you know, provided that you have this processing power, this company will just focus on deploying and developing its own services, and it will be Fluidos that decides where those services will be deployed, case by case. So saving a huge amount of power, manpower, in order to handle this huge variability in different conditions. I don't know if this use case helps to understand why Fluidos is important for them. Okay, another question that says, any real-time technology inside, or does it support a real-time OS piece of software? Thanks for this question, very interesting question. And currently the consortium hasn't started to work in that direction. So the support for real-time OS has not been tested, and I'm pretty sure that there are a lot of challenges in case of real-time software that we should address, and we didn't start yet. So it could be a perfect fit for open calls. Another question from Christos. Can you please specify again the orchestrator between Kubernetes and FLUIDOS? Yes, sure. This component is the LIQO, written LIQO.io, which is an open source Apache license and so on. Question from John Iglesias. We want to present a smart city vehicular use case. Is this something that matches? Is it redundant with another partner? So no, it's not redundant. We don't have smart city use cases right now. We don't have vehicle use cases right now. Just to remind that for us, smart city means nothing. Vehicle means nothing. What matters is the computing continuum. So you have to define your use case of a smart city and blah, blah, in the FLUIDOS continuum, computing continuum. Okay, so I cannot say a smart city is a perfect use case. I have no idea. It would be a perfect use case if you demonstrate the advantage of the FLUIDOS computing continuum in a smart city. Okay, that's a very, very nice proposition then.
And just to add on the end, the deadline for applications is the 29th of February, 5 o'clock, just to follow up on that question. Okay, we can give it a few more moments. There we go. Another question for you before we open. You're in demand at the moment.
Okay, there's a question from Georgos. You mentioned that you support ROS. Is the idea to distribute a ROS node to various devices using FLUIDOS, and how do you facilitate the communication between them? So yes, we support ROS. The idea of supporting a ROS node is something that we're exploring with another use case that I didn't present it here, but is provided by Robotnik. So Robotnik is one of our partners, is doing robotic logistics, and all the robots, so the rovers that are moving into a factory are equipped by ROS. Just to say that we're working on ROS. The novelty of your approach should be validated, just because we cannot duplicate our work. But for that, there is the champion. So please allow me to stress again, please use the champions. The champions are really there. Our people are really there to help you in order to make a better proposal. So I cannot answer yes and no here because I don't know the details of what you're gonna propose. but definitely use the champions. And for the same reason, I mean, the same answer applies also to the next question from George. Can we propose another smart viticulture use case? Definitely you can, because the problem is not a smart viticulture. The problem is how do you use the computing continuum, okay? And then the smart viticulture is just an example of that. So I don't care about names. Smart viticulture is already present. Who cares? Are you demonstrating something different from what our TerraView partner is already doing or not? Because if it is the same thing, of course, it would be a duplication. I mean, we cannot fund two proposals that are demonstrating the same result. But if you are trying to demonstrate something else, something different, absolutely fine with us. So do not focus on the single words like, oh, smart viticulture has already covered. No, it's not that the problem. Okay.
The recording of the webinar, yeah, it will be available. We're not sure how soon after the event it will be, but the presentations will also be shared. And then the recording will probably go up on the project's YouTube channel at some point shortly afterwards.
Fluido license is, individual partners have the right to decide their own license. But most of the components actually have been delivered, released with the Apache 2. I cannot make promise that all the components will be Apache 2 because, you know, each member of the consortium develops a little piece and has the right to decide its own piece of the license, but mostly is Apache 2.
Okay, we can just wait a few more moments in case there's any last questions. But if not, I'd just like to say thank you very much, everybody, for joining today. Just to remind you that the presentations will be shared quite quickly after the meeting, so you have access to all of the links and email addresses. As Fulvio said, the champions are ready and waiting to help you, so please take advantage of that service. It can really help you make sure that your proposals are aligned with the project and what we're intending to do. So please feel free to reach out using the contact email for that. And yeah, best of luck with your proposals, and thank you for joining us today.